Look, let's be fair. Saying never is kind of silly. Welcome in, everyone. My name is Matt. Gummy Cryptic if you prefer. And today we're talking about Blender. First, let's talk about Blender. What is it? If you don't already know, thank you for clicking on this video and welcome to the world of 3D. Blender is an independent animation application developed as freeware. It's free for anyone to use. There is no pricing, there is no commitment, there's no contracts. It's just free. It's free for everyone. But because it's freeware, that means it's developed as a collaborative effort between a large group of people and some companies who all work together to build support for the application. Since 2002, Blender has been challenging the industry with new development as the app got more powerful and more sophisticated. It's been used by many indie creators at this point to create things like commercials, short films, and even some full feature-length films. And it's honestly a really solid piece of software. So why would someone like me never use Blender? Probably. It's really actually two very simple reasons. Reason number one is because, quite frankly, I've been using Maya for 15 years now. It's a very rugged application, and it's not necessarily something that I'm looking to get away from. I was at one point looking to get away from it, but every other tool I tried, I didn't like it as much. Maya has also been used on countless films, video games, and commercial projects. It's really an industry standard when it comes to a 3D application. And two, because Blender isn't. Blender hasn't been adopted into the industry as a standard, and it probably never will be. And that's not necessarily meant to be a bad thing. When we talk about the term industry standard, we're really talking about a list of concepts as well as standards. Things like the history of the application, the support structure that the application has behind it, and what it does, along with many more items that would check the box for an industry standard application. When we look at Blender, it simply lacks one of the biggest, which is corporate support structure. That's needed by a studio to remove a tried and true application from their pipeline and replace it with Blender. To be fair though, some companies are on their own beginning to experiment with and try Blender in their workflows and see how it works. CD Projekt Red did a really amazing short advertising the power of Blender when they created a small short called Trauma Team to advertise Cyberpunk 2077. So the push to use Blender in the industry is existing in some spaces, but it's kind of at a limited capacity. Blender, because of its nature, is an independent project and it relies on many outside developers, and simply lacks the support structure needed by larger studios to basically take their pipeline and gut it and not have the fear that they're going to run into a production halting issue that they can't solve because Blender doesn't have like a corporate support structure. And it's not necessarily to say that it's a bad thing that they don't have that. It's just, it doesn't exist, therefore it doesn't really suit these companies to use, because if they run into an issue, let's say Autodesk could patch overnight or something like that, they can reach out to their support engineers, and they have on-call engineers who work with these companies because these companies pay a lot of money to have these services available to them. Blender just simply doesn't have that, and it's really going to be its downfall when it ever comes to the concept and the conversation of making it an industry standard application. But I also don't want this to be looked on as a negative thing, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with it. I use freeware in my everyday life, and freeware itself is an amazing tool, and Blender is an amazing tool. There are just very realistic reasons as to why it is not used widely. So that kind of beckons the question is, should you even use it? A lot of people talk down on Blender for really no reason. It's powerful, it's free, all you need is an okay PC, and you can get started in the world of 3D without buying expensive software, like me. If you're new to the world of 3D, I absolutely suggest that you go with Blender. It's a great way to dive into almost every aspect of 3D for free or little investment, depending on what hardware you're running it on. There's also a growing community around it. Blender over the past couple of years has really amped up its development and shown its power. All in all, I think Blender is an awesome way to start in your 3D journey, but that advice does come with a caveat. If you're looking to get a job in an industry that does 3D, I highly suggest learning what is used to create those products in that industry that you're looking to go towards. And one of the best ways to make yourself a more viable candidate for these jobs is to know their pipeline, know their software. A lot of the pipelines are not necessarily public information, but if you can figure out what software they use, generally you have a pretty good start, and they'll accept that and they'll like that. I think it's very important when it comes to somebody who has a goal of working in the industry is to find a way to do that. Whether that's buying an AD license or using a student copy, find some way to learn the application that you're going to be primarily working with, because unfortunately in most use cases you don't get to go walk into a studio and say, I use Blender, so I'm going to use Blender. I'm sure there are some. I've just never personally seen one that actually allows that. And again, I also don't work in the industry, so take that advice with a grain of salt. But to me, that is kind of the best thing. And it was the same thing that was kind of repeated to me throughout college, is make sure you understand the tools that are used in the trade. Knowing the concepts is good, and Blender is great for learning the concepts. But if you don't learn the tools that they use, you're less of a candidate to them. And it doesn't mean that your portfolio isn't good enough. It just means that you're less of a candidate, because if you're going up against somebody who already knows the software, who has a portfolio just as good as yours, they're going to choose that person over you, because there's less learning time, there's less downtime to train up a new employee on a new piece of software. All in all, whatever app you choose, I hope it opens doors for you. Blender is a great choice for new artists, just as much as Maya is if you want to actually buy the license. Really, the choice is kind of up to you. I wanted to make this video because I feel like so many people fight over what's better for really no reason. Most 3D apps are great regardless, and most do the same things, just in different ways, and they all have their respective problems. I can't tell you how many people have asked me how I enjoy my crashes in Maya, and yet I see forums where people complain about Blender crashing all the time. So really, all the applications have their own triggers to break them. It's just a matter of learning them and working around them. They're all developed kind of hastily, and it happens. And honestly, will the day come that I use Blender? Probably. Will I switch from Maya to Blender? Absolutely not. I don't think so. Unless there is a massive shift, I do not think so. Because quite frankly, I'm going to stick with what I know and what I'm good at. And hopefully the content on my channel can help you grow in your 3D journey, regardless of what you chose. So with all that said, I want to thank you for watching this video. Please make sure you like and subscribe, because it does help the channel grow. And I'll see you all in the next one.